Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Orphanlast, aka Skylar Madison, and today we're going to go ahead and make this fountain. Now, I understand that this is going to be probably a very difficult video for you guys to follow, especially if perspective is very new to you. But there's some idea that I want to get out of even experienced artists' head. And that is that 1-point perspective is for 1-perspective drawings, and 2-point perspective is for 2-point perspective drawings.
These two ideas need to die.
Let's go ahead and start by dissecting the sketch, okay? So right now I have a background layer that's white, I have the fountain itself, and I have an empty layer on top of it. With this empty layer on top of it, I'm going to call it red, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it red, okay? So, just dissecting the sketch here, let's try to think in terms of perspective. What are the basic shapes here? Like the super most basic shapes. Let's dumb this down to just like cubes, squares, rectangles, things like that. So, what I can definitely see right here is this. Let me go ahead and lower the opacity on our reference so that I can actually see what I'm doing here. What I can see right now is there is a rectangular shape right here. Next, what I see is a rectangle that's sitting on top of here. And then another rectangle on top of it. Another rectangle on top of that.
And then a little, squiggly do. We don't need to worry too much about that, I don't think.
We'll get into that later. This in the center here, we can boil this down to just being a rectangle. Now keep in mind, this is not a guide on how to draw a fountain, because every time you draw a fountain, it's going to be different. Just like the drawing with doodles video inside of the Teach Me to Draw series. Okay, so it's going to be different every time you draw something. It's more than just learning where the lines go. Okay, so what I see is kind of a rectangular shape right here. Now the rectangle doesn't have perfectly right angles going on with it by any stretch of the imagination. It's still pretty much a rectangle. Another rectangular sort of shape going on right here, and so on. So I intentionally selected a reference that was going to be extremely easy to work with. So we're going to try to replicate that. Let's make that our main priority for right now. Let's go ahead and select the assistant tool, select the vanishing point, and boom, right there, just like that. And let's go ahead and pick out the parallel ruler and make 2 parallel rulers, one perfectly horizontal and one perfectly vertical. This is where, if you have not seen the how to use Krita's assistant tool and what it's good for video, that is a prerequisite to this video, okay? So a card will be supplied in the upper right corner of the screen if you haven't seen that video. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. Let me go ahead and just create a new layer and call it blue. So I'm going to go ahead and just create this bottom portion of it right there at the bottom. Alright, so that should do, let's put it right there. And let's go ahead and draw the sides of it and the top of it, okay? We have this line that's going off this direction. It is going away from us, but it's not going to the same sort of vanishing point, it doesn't seem like. So that's fine. We're going to go ahead and select the assistant tool again, and we're going to select vanishing point. This is where the vanishing point is. Let's just go straight horizontal across off the canvas and then just pick a spot.
Don't go too far away. Don't go so far off the canvas that it's ridiculous.
But you can pick arbitrary positions for the 2-point perspective vanishing points if you want. But if they're just too far away, they will never simulate 90 degrees. So that looks like it will do. It will simulate the appearance of 90 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out my brush, press Ctrl-Shift-L, and I'm just going to draw some lines that go off towards the 2-point perspective. So the vanishing point to the left and the vanishing point to the right. Okay, awesome. Now we can go ahead and just decide where the edge of the fountain is. I'm going to pull out my assistant tool real quick and just select the eyeball and deselect the eyeball and lower the opacity of these. I'm going to turn this into a green, okay? So I can see it and it doesn't interfere with any of my other lines. And then I'm going to go ahead and decide where this portion of this fountain ends. And I'm going to go ahead and delete what I don't need. These lines are going on our reference here. If we follow these lines, they meet up with the vanishing point, right? And same thing with this. If I followed these lines far enough off the canvas, we would have a vanishing point. And that's, I kind of decided where that vanishing point would be all on my own. But generally, I'm just following a general idea of what the reference is. At least for right now. You can get away with generalities in a lot of cases. So clearly these lines that are right here and right here, they're going to 1 point perspective because that's right in the smack dab, right in the middle of our vision. So let's go ahead and press Ctrl-Shift-L and draw these lines going off towards the center of our vision. Okay? Awesome. Okay, well now we need to get this angle right here. And this angle right here.
How do we get that?
It's easy, really, because this line right here, this line right here, this line right here, and this line right here, and this line right here, they're all converging on the same vanishing point when it's all said and done. So we're going to use our left vanishing point to determine how that back end is going to be. Sometimes this can be tricky when you have a whole bunch of assistants pulling on your stuff here. Okay, now we have a little bit of a problem here. Okay, so this back wall, where does it start? Right here, and where does it end? How do we determine where the verticals are? Well, we already know where this front end starts, and we already know where it ends too. So let's go ahead and draw some guidelines towards the vanishing point. Awesome. Okay, let's pull out the blue. This intersection that's going on right here, that tells me where it starts and where it ends horizontally. Okay, so what we can do is I'm just going to go ahead and pull out my eraser. I'm going to erase what I don't need so that you guys can just focus on what you need to be looking at. And I'm going to press Ctrl-Shift-L, make sure that it's working just fine. And I'm going to follow my horizontal guide. Awesome. Okay, so now we have our right vanishing point, which will tell us this angle right here. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do that from where that back end finished. Okay, excellent. Okay, so we got that. Let's go ahead and erase what we don't need. Okay, so we have a good starting point here. Let's go ahead and get these diagonals going on here. Okay, and each one of these lines, I just decided I'm just going to follow the vanishing point. That'll be good enough. It seems like it works pretty good in our reference, and so let's do that. Okay, now we need to determine how thick it is. I'm just going to eyeball it and say it is that thick. Now, have you ever grabbed an apple and then grabbed a knife and rotated the apple and tried to hold your knife perfectly still? And you rotate the apple and you try to meet up perfectly where you first started cutting? Most of the time you get it wrong, but just try to get it right. And that's pretty much what we're doing here. The same sort of philosophy. We need to try to get it right with our angles here, with this back wall here. So now what we need to decide is I'm going to pull out the red layer and I'm just going to quickly draw out as if everything is transparent here. And all of these lines, once again, I'm using the vanishing points.
That's all I'm doing, using the vanishing points and my horizontal and vertical guides to determine what these lines are.
These are all either straight up and down, perfectly horizontal, or going towards left and right vanishing point, or towards this vanishing point. That's all that I'm doing. In what order you do it in and how you do it, it's all just a matter of practice, practicing the logic. Okay, now I'm going to get rid of what you don't need to be looking at. And I'm going to use the blue, and I'm just going to go ahead and redraw this again. Okay, so you guys remember grid video, right? In the grid video, I went ahead and I created a grid by drawing a bunch of X's on squares, right? Okay, well, let's do the same thing. And because that is the perfect way to find center. What is the center of an object, okay? And so I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer, and I'm going to call it green. and select green out of the layer properties. And I'm going to draw a perfectly horizontal line going across here and a horizontal line going across here. Okay, so now we have a square. Now I'm going to press and hold V and go to the corner of this square over here and then go over here. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here with the other two corners. Okay, so now we know where center is, okay? This is the center of our fountain. And that is essential for us to be able to make this whole area right here, all right? It's essential. Okay, I can see that this rectangle right here in the middle, it is 2-point perspective. What I'm going to do is I need to decide how thick I'm going to have this be. And I need to draw a line that is going from the central vanishing point out a little bit, okay? And this can be pretty difficult once you start getting really close to the center. Okay, what is it that's throwing me off? I think the assistant that's throwing me off is the vertical assistant. Okay, so that's the horizontal assistant. Okay, I'm going to turn off the vertical assistant for right now because it's what's throwing me off. So I'm going to pull out my brush, and that's going to allow me to draw from the 1-point perspective line, the central vanishing point. Going to turn on my assistant, turn on my vertical assistant, turn off the central vanishing point. Okay? So now I get to decide how thick I'm going to have my cylinder here. So I'm going to draw a line that goes horizontally across here because it's going to help me be able to gauge just how thick the central portion of this fountain is, okay? I'm gonna see what I got. RGB. Okay, so I'm gonna create a new layer, and I'm gonna turn off red and blue, and makes it purple. Okay, that's perfect. So I'm gonna go from that horizontal line that I just drew to this line out here. And that's going to help me determine how thick this is going to be. And I'm even going to draw the back face of this here. Okay, so it's meeting up right smack dab in the center, it looks like. Which is good, because that's kind of like how it's working out inside of our reference. Alright, so looking still kind of down, we can see around right here, this first rectangular shape kind of comes to an end here. Okay? So let me get rid of some lines that you don't need. Now, this is what I mean by it's very difficult to teach perspective, because it's hard to make heads or tails of what it is that I just drew. That is very confusing. That's why I use different colors. Different colors mean different things to me. They may make sense to me, but they might not make sense to you. So this is why you need to practice perspective and memorize the logic behind it for each given circumstance. It is extremely difficult, but it is totally worthwhile. So we have this lower portion figured out. Now we need to get this upper rectangular shape created. In order to create a rectangle that's smaller, I'm going to draw a little horizontal line from this corner out a little bit, and that's going to help me out in making sure that this is going to be a thinner rectangle. Now, our fountain's going to be a little bit different than this because I picked a region that's a little too low for this to work out exactly the way it is in our reference, but it is going to be the same fountain, okay? This is why it's more than where the lines go. Basically, the reason why mine is going to be different is because the horizon line is somewhere right here inside of the reference. And how do I know that? Well, because I have these upward lines that are going towards this vanishing point to the right and to the left. I have upward lines, and I have downward lines, okay? And that tells me that this vanishing point is going to be right here, so that horizon line is right there. Whereas with our horizon line, it's way up here. And that's fine. We don't need it to be 100% the same as the reference, because all I'm trying to do is draw the same fountain.
I'm not trying to draw the same fountain from the same angle. I'm just trying to draw the same fountain.
And drawing in perspective allows me to do that as long as I'm able to try to visualize objects spatially. If you're having difficulty visualizing shapes spatially, then perspective's going to do it for you. It's going to show you how to do that. Okay, so I'm going to say that's about the right height. So I need to draw two lines going towards the left and right vanishing points like that. Okay, so this is going to be taller. So I'm going to draw a perfect horizontal line coming from here out, and that's going to telling me how far out this direction it goes. Okay, that's the equivalent of me drawing a line that just goes like this. It's not for perspective, it's just a measurement line. Okay, and in fact, you know what, how about I just draw that line in red? Okay, so that's our horizontal line in red. So now that we got that, I have no idea where this front corner of the reference should be on our. So I'm going to activate our central vanishing point again by using the assistant tool, and I'm going to pull out the brush, and I'm just going to draw a line that goes out like that. Okay, and then I'm going to deactivate that central vanishing point once again. Okay, that looks about right. So it's about right here-ish. It's difficult to gauge because it's so close to the vanishing point. So I'm going to get rid of that red line because it's starting to obstruct. And basically, a lot of perspective, when you're drawing in perspective, a lot of it is just merely making a bunch of measurement lines and making sure that you get lines to collide with one another. When you get lines to collide with each other, that's telling you, okay, that's where one shape meets up with another. It's very difficult to really articulate. A picture is worth 1,000 words. We're kind of reaching this point to where I'm having an extreme difficulty explaining what it is that I'm doing here. Okay, so here's an example of what I'm talking about. The collision of lines is essential. Well, where's the back portion of this rectangle that I'm making here? Okay, well, let me go ahead and grab this corner, draw a line out. Okay, well, now let's go to the other corner, draw a line out. Okay, it collides right there. Okay, that's the back face. That's where the back corner of this rectangle is. So let's go ahead and do that. All right. So now we have this fancy little squiggly do. Oh wait, no, we have two rectangular shapes that go on top of here. So let's go ahead and draw those out. We can be really precise with this, but I'm not really too worried about it, to be honest. Once you start working really close to the vanishing point, it gets really difficult to be precise, unless you're doing all of your measurements a ways away from where you're working. We have those two stair steps that go up, right? And now we have the squiggly do. Alright, so let's go ahead and make our squiggly do. There's our squiggly do. So now, this dissection of the sketch...
We can get rid of that now. It's served its purpose and all of that good stuff.
Let's go ahead and get rid of it.
And turn on our actual reference, okay? That way we can actually see what we're doing here.
Now, there's a bunch of reference lines that I don't need, so I'm going to pull out my eraser and get rid of those. And, you know, this is a fountain. You would imagine that there'd be water in here, so I'm just gonna draw in blue where the water would be in the fountain. Once again, I'm just using the guides and the vanishing points to determine what these lines should be. Oh, right, I need to turn on this central vanishing point to draw these. Alright, now let's go to this purple layer, and let's go ahead and erase what we don't need out of it, okay? Because we were treating what we were drawing as if it's transparent, and now we're going to get rid of some of this blue because it's in the way, and it's treating part of the sketch as if it's transparent. And let's go ahead and start drawing this thing out. Okay, so I'm gonna draw a line that goes like that and like that, because that's going to be a bit of a reference line for me, a series of reference lines as I'm drawing this out. And here at the bottom, I'm gonna just draw that out like that. Okay, awesome. So at this stage, I'm gonna press Control E, and that merged all of my colored layers together. And they all turned black because I was drawing everything in black. And I can see a problem here. Some of this is still transparent, and so I can get rid of any part of this that still behaves as if it's transparent. Now, I got some of the proportions wrong, but, you know, it still looks like a fountain, so I'm happy about that. Let's go ahead and lower the opacity of this layer and create a new one. So I can just draw this freehand, okay? Now I have the basic sketch is already here, and the basic sketch is perfect in accordance to how it would look in 3D space. And so now I can just kind of just draw out little details, and as long as I am loyal to these lines that I've already established, there won't be a problem with my image. And I can go ahead and get the details in here fairly quickly. And if I need to use one of my assistants, there's nothing that says that I can't. But I'm sure that by the time that you guys reach this stage, a lot of newbies will be like, well, I feel like I'm restricted, so I want to do things freehand. Okay, well, if you want to do things freehand, go ahead. If you feel like that's what liberates you, do it. Like my high school teacher said, I want you to feel free. Of course, he was a bit of a lunatic, so he'd be like, I want you to be free, free, free. He was a little bit of, like I said, like a lunatic.
But he was a good lunatic. He taught me a lot, although he seemed to like Picasso, so I can't say I'm much of a fan of the same artwork as him.
But generally, I do want you guys to feel free. And perspective is an animal. It really is. It's an animal, and
it can zap out all of your sense of creativity. It really can. And so I want to know that if you can freehand at this point, go ahead and freehand.
But if you feel more confident with the guides, then go ahead and use the guides. Use either one whenever it feels most comfortable to you.
Now, this isn't the grid method where you're trying to duplicate exactly what you see.
This is the...
I want to draw what I see, but I want to draw it from my own mind.
That is what this is, okay? You can still do that and still use a reference. You can still use your imagination and use your reference at the same time. Okay, so I can see that there's a design here, and what I'm going to do for the design is I need to have a little bit of a reference here. I need to be able to see what I'm doing elsewhere without having to look up at my reference every 2 seconds in order to dissect what it is that's going on with my reference every 2 seconds. So I'm going to dissect the sketch, and I'm going to press Ctrl-T with this new layer, and that's going to allow me to bring it down here, and if I need to, I can go ahead and change the color of it so I know that it's just a reference, and I can go ahead and get this pattern without having to move my screen around all over the place. And I'm going to draw exactly that design that's over here. Now, to get the thickness of this thing all the way around just perfect, there is math inside of perspective to help you be able to figure that sort of thing out. Personally, I don't find it helpful. It's not something that you want to obsess over all the time. You don't want to become the perspective Nazi where you are so picky about every single one of your lines that you're not able to finish the image, that you feel caged by perspective. That's not what perspective is for, in my opinion. Perspective is there to help you figure out the gist, then to allow you to use your freedom and your intuition as an artist and to determine how the line should be. Now, there is some degree to where you're going to need to use perspective exactly, otherwise you're just going to run into problems later on down the road. But once you're done with doing all that crap, you shouldn't be forcing yourself to doing every last detail perfect with perspective. You can do it. Like I said, perspective is math. Perspective is a form of geometry. And for those of you that are really young and don't really know what I mean by that, geometry is a type of math where you don't use any numbers at all. You just draw a series of lines, and how those lines or circles or whatever are interacting with each other, that will tell you specific things about them mathematically. That's basically what geometry is, kind of in a really dumbed down nutshell sort of way. Now, you don't want to use the transform tool too much when you're doing perspective, but if it's just a minor change, that's fine. You can get away with it if it's just a minor change. Now, one thing that I'm noticing is that smack dab in the middle here, there's a joint. I'm over exaggerating how the joint is, but there's a joint there, which means that there's 2 separate stones. So I want to erase some of these things here that are kind of obstructing my view, and I'm going to press V on the corner here of this rectangle so I can find halfway. Okay, so it's a little bit above halfway. So if I go like that, it's just slightly above the halfway mark, so I can just make sure that I draw a joint going on through there on my drawing here. Erase a little bit of my lines here, because when there's two stones stacked on top of each other, the edges of the rocks tend to kind of fold in just a little bit. Okay, so at this point in the video, it becomes a little bit of a speed paint, but then slows down pretty quickly to becoming a tutorial again. And the reason why I'm doing that at this point in time is because the logic inside of perspective tends to be pretty repetitive. Now, all of my guidelines, everything that I draw inside of this little speed painting portion is basically the sort of logic that you've already seen multiple times. So you guys should know at this point the reason why I draw variously different guidelines and such like that. And you're still able to follow with what I'm doing if you want to draw every single identical line that I'm drawing on the screen. I don't know why you would, because in all likelihood your drawing is going to be a little bit different. Your fountain, if you're following along with this video, is going to be a slightly different angle than what I'm drawing. And so, you know, it's going to be different, pure and simple. So drawing every single little line that's exactly the same as mine probably won't work out for you. But yeah, I still get people requesting for me to draw, to make a video, and me explaining every line that I draw. And this is the closest thing that I can think of to a video like that that would actually be productive. And for me to edit together this video, and so far it's pretty much 27 minutes long, at least at this point in the video, and I don't even know if anyone's going to reach this point. I don't even know if anyone's even remotely interested in watching a video like this. And it takes like 6 or 7 times the amount of work in the editing room trying to edit this thing together. So if you guys want more content like this, I need to know that it's worthwhile. And I'm not really the sort of guy that stops a video halfway through and goes, "Hey guys, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Yeah, make sure you like, share, and subscribe." I'm not that guy. At the end of my videos, I suggest people do, but, you know, 90% of the people that watch my videos don't even watch that part. So, I mean, I see the audience retention, so most people don't even see me asking for likes, shares, and subscribes, but I need to see something inside of my analytics that actually shows that people are interested in more videos that are just like this. Otherwise, I don't see a reason to spend 5 to 6 times the amount of time and work trying to get a video out like this on a regular basis. So let me know. I need to know. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe if this is something that you want to see more of. Okay? And, you know, you don't need to know how I draw every little line. This cross-hatching that you see on the screen right now, it's just me adding little tiny details to the rock or the stone, so that it looks like it has contours and such like that. And you'll notice that I'm not really going up and looking at my reference a whole lot while doing this. And the reason why I'm not doing that is because the general overall shape and everything is accurate to my reference. If I have some little divot in the rock that's not perfect as it is according to the reference, I don't really care. No one cares about whether or not every little tiny imperfection in a stone is exactly the same as your reference. They just want to see a fountain. Okay, so at this point, I am going to start coloring this. So I'm going to use the magic wand tool, I think is what it's called, contiguous selection, and I'm going to get rid of my reference, and I'm going to go ahead and just select the exterior of the object. Okay, yeah. Okay, so that worked out pretty well. I'm going to go to Selection, Grow Selection, 2 pixels, Control-Shift-I to inverse the selection, and at this point I'm going to just start focusing on shading, I suppose, okay? And I'm going to pull out a brush that's just an airbrushy looking thing, okay? And I'm going to create a layer underneath my line work. That way I could just quickly line some things out real quick. I'm going to use kind of an off-white, and I'm thinking I'm just going to use kind of a purpley color. Not white enough. Okay, so that's my off-white background that I'm going to color, and I'm going to select a darker color, and I'm just going to color in areas that I think would be in shadow, I suppose. Okay, and now I'm just gonna select the dark color, and I'm just gonna go a little bit darker and more desaturated. That will determine a little bit of ambient occlusion, I guess is what it's called, where the light can't really get into that much. If you go outside of the line just a little bit, it's fine if you do a little bit, because that's kind of how light and shadow tends to work out. Now, I'm not a master of shading by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm competent enough at it. Okay, so that takes care of our shadows. Now let's take care of some highlights. Okay, I can see where I need to have more shadow here and there inside the fountain, and I'm just gonna use the color picker to select more of a darker color, and I'm just gonna color in areas I feel would occlude light as much as possible, or quite a bit, and any of the excess that I don't want to be occluded I could just use my eraser on that, and sometimes I just pop out a different layer just because I know that I'm going to go outside of the lines, and if I need to erase something, it's easier when that's just devoted to its own layer. Alright, so that takes care of some highlights. Let's go a little bit darker. I feel like there could be a lot more occlusion here. So this video has been pretty much a big experiment to see if people are actually interested in learning how to draw, specifically with perspective and such, and it's a long, lengthy, very difficult process, and it's not something that you could just summarize in a 10-minute video. I don't know. It seems like everyone else's art channels are all about just entertainment, and I suppose I could do something like that, but I think there are people that are still wanting to learn how to draw, and there's not very many actual educational videos on how to draw in perspective, and this is the reason why. It's very laborious. Anyways, guys, that pretty much concludes it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe, and if you guys would like to get more notifications from me, feel free to click on the bell or follow me on Twitter, and if you guys would like to see more content from me, feel free to click on anything that's appearing on the screen right now. Thank you very much for your time.